The ice planet Corveth Prime looked peaceful from space, but Captain Jiwan knew something was wrong. The ground beneath her research station had been shaking for 3 days now, and the vibrations were getting stronger. Her team of human scientists had been studying this frozen world for 6 months, looking for ancient minerals and old technology, but they never expected to find something alive. Jiwan stood in the main control room watching the sensor readings on her screen. The ice was cracking, in perfect circles, like someone was drawing patterns from below. Officer Minho ran into the room holding a datapad with worry written all over his face. The readings show something huge moving down there. He said, "The thing is bigger than our entire space station." Before Jiwan could respond, the whole building shook so hard that everyone fell to the floor. The lights went out for a moment, and when they came back on the ice outside was glowing with a strange blue light. Through the thick windows, they could see cracks spreading across the surface like spider webs. The cracks were glowing too, and the light was getting brighter every second. Then it happened. The ground exploded upward in a shower of ice and rock that reached into the sky. Something massive burst through the surface of the planet, roaring with a sound that made the air itself shake. The creature was so big that at first Jiwan thought it was a mountain moving. But mountains do not have tentacles the size of skyscrapers or eyes that burn like dying stars. The beast rose higher and higher into the air. Its body was covered in skin that changed colors like oil on water, shifting from deep purple to bright silver to angry red. Its tentacles moved like they were dancing, but each movement could crush a city. The creature had no mouth that they could see, but somehow it was making sounds that hurt their minds just to hear. "Get everyone to the ships," Jiwan shouted over the noise. But her voice sounded tiny compared to the roaring outside. The creature was fully out of the ice now, and it was even bigger than they had thought. It was longer than their biggest spaceships and wider than the research station. The tentacles kept growing longer, as if the creature was stretching. After a very long sleep, Minho grabbed the emergency communicator and tried to contact their main ship in orbit, but all he got was static. The creature was doing something to their equipment, making everything spark and smoke. The lights in the building were flashing on and off, and the computers were showing nothing but random numbers and letters. Through the chaos, Jiwan could hear her team members screaming and running toward the escape pods, but she could not move. She stood at the window watching. The creature with a mixture of fear and wonder. This thing was ancient. She could feel it in her bones. It had been sleeping under the ice for thousands, maybe millions of years, and now it was awake and very angry. The creature turned its massive head toward their building, and Jiwon saw its eyes for the first time. They were not the eyes of a simple animal. These eyes held intelligence and memory and pain that was older than human civilization. The creature looked at her through the window and, for a moment, she felt like it was looking into her soul. Then the psychic scream hit. The sound was not heard with ears, but felt with minds. It was pure rage and confusion and loneliness, all mixed together and broadcast directly into the thoughts of every living thing in the star system. Jiwan fell to her knees, holding her head as the creature's emotions flooded through her mind. She could feel its anger at being awakened, its confusion at finding the world changed, and its desperate need to find something that was no longer there. All across the star system, ships began crashing into asteroids as their pilots lost control. The great space station orbiting the nearby gas giant went dark as everyone aboard fainted at the same time. Even the mighty alien fleets that had been patrolling this sector of space turned and ran as fast as their engines could carry them. The Valkoran Empire, with their beautiful crystal ships and energy weapons that could cut through planets, fired one volley at the creature and then fled when their shots did nothing but make it angrier. The Zephyrians, who could fold space and time to travel instantly across the galaxy, took one look at the beast and teleported to the far edge of known space. The proud Nexari warriors, with their perfect armor and weapons that never missed, fired their best shots and then ran like frightened children when the creature barely noticed. But Jiwan did not run. She watched as the creature rose higher into the sky, its tentacles reaching toward the stars as if it was trying to grab something that was not there. The beast was looking for something, she realized. It was searching for something that should have been there but was gone. The anger and confusion in its psychic voice made more sense now. This creature was lost as her team finally dragged her to the escape pods, and their ship lifted off from the doomed planet. Jiwan made a promise to herself. Other species might run from this ancient terror, but humans would find a way to face it. Humans always found a way to face the impossible and somehow make it possible. The creature watched their small ship escape and did not try to stop them. Instead, it turned toward the nearest populated planet and began moving through space like a living mountain of rage and sorrow. Behind it, Corveth Prime cracked and broke apart. The ice planet, destroyed by the force of the ancient awakening, as their ship jumped to hyperspace. Jiwan looked back one last time at the creature that had just changed the galaxy forever. She did not know how, but she knew that humans would find a way to stop this terror when everyone else had failed. They always did. 3 months had passed since the ancient terror had awakened and the galaxy was falling apart. The creature moved from star system to star system, like a hungry beast, eating everything in its path. Entire planets went silent in a single day, leaving nothing behind but empty space and broken dreams. Dr. Hayun worked in her laboratory on Earth, surrounded by data screens that showed the destruction happening across the galaxy. Every day brought new reports of worlds that had gone dark, space stations that had been destroyed in minutes, fleets of warships that had been crushed like toys in the hands of an angry child. The creature was not just destroying things randomly. Hayun had noticed patterns in its movement. It was learning from every battle, adapting to every weapon that was used against it. The first time someone shot it with energy, weapons the creature had been hurt. But the second time the same weapons did nothing. The beast had somehow changed its body to absorb the energy and make itself stronger. Nuclear weapons had worked once. Then the creature learned to eat nuclear fire like food. Gravity weapons that could crush planets became useless after one battle. The creature simply changed the way its body worked and laughed at the forces that should have destroyed it. Hayun realized that fighting this thing the normal way was impossible. Admiral Dongho called an emergency meeting of all human military leaders. The holographic display showed the path of destruction. The Aidai creature had carved through the galaxy. Entire sectors were now empty space where once great civilizations had thrived. The Velcoran crystal cities that had taken thousands of years to build were gone in a single night. The mighty Nexari homeworld, with its perfect defenses, had fallen silent after a battle that lasted only 3 hours. We have received requests for help from every major species in the galaxy. Admiral Dongho said, his voice heavy with the weight of impossible responsibility. The Velcorans are begging us to share our nuclear technology. The Zephyrians want our help building weapons that can fold space. The Nexari are asking for our battle strategies, but none of it will work. We have seen what happens when you fight this creature with force. Dr. Hayun stood up slowly, her mind racing with ideas that seemed crazy, but might be the only hope left. "What if we are thinking about this all wrong?" she said quietly. "What if the reason everyone is failing is because they are trying to fight it like an enemy?" The room fell silent as military leaders and scientists turned to look at the young doctor who had spent more time studying the creature than anyone else alive. She activated her datapad and showed them recordings of the creature's movements, analyzed frame by frame. "Look at the pattern," she said, pointing to the holographic display. "The creature does not attack randomly. It avoids some planets completely while destroying others in great detail. It moves in patterns that remind me of migration routes that animals use on Earth. When it destroys a planet, it takes specific types of energy, not just anything, it can find. Admiral Dongho leaned forward with interest. "What are you suggesting?" Dr. Hayun took a deep breath, knowing that what she was about to say would sound impossible. "I think this creature is not evil," she said. "It is lost. The energy it is taking. The way it moves. The fact that it gets more violent when cornered. All of these things remind me of a lost animal that is scared and trying to find its way home." The room erupted in arguments and protests. Several officers said that the creature had killed billions of people and destroyed entire civilizations. It could not possibly be just a lost animal. But Hayun held up her hand for quiet. "I am not saying it is innocent," she continued. "I am saying it is not a monster by choice. Every time someone attacks it, the creature gets more desperate and more violent. But in between battles, it does not destroy everything it could. It chooses specific targets for specific reasons. That is not the behavior of a mindless killer. That is the behavior of something intelligent that is looking for something." Meanwhile, refugees from destroyed worlds continued to fill the space lanes, telling stories of the terror that had consumed their homes. The creature had grown larger, with each battle feeding on the energy of destroyed planets and becoming stronger than ever before. Some refugees spoke of hearing voices in their minds during the attacks, voices that spoke of loneliness and confusion and desperate searching for something lost. The Galactic Council met in emergency sessions every day. Now, species that had been enemies for centuries were working together, trying to find some way to stop the ancient terror. But every weapon they tried failed. Every strategy they used was countered. Every trap they set was avoided, as if the creature could read their minds on the outer rim worlds. Panic had begun to set in. People were abandoning their homes and fleeing toward the galactic edge, hoping to find safety in the empty spaces between stars. Trade stopped working as shipping lanes became too dangerous to use entire star systems. Were cutting themselves off from the galactic communication network, hoping the creature would not notice them. But Dr. Hayun continued her research, studying every piece of data about the creature she could find. She noticed that it moved faster. When it was near certain types of stars, it slowed down in areas of space that had specific mineral compositions. It avoided nebulae that contained certain gases as if they made it sick or uncomfortable. "These are not the actions of a destroyer," she told her research team. "These are the actions of something that is trying to navigate by landmarks that are no longer there. The universe has changed since this creature went to sleep. Stars have died. New ones have been born. The pathways it once knew are gone." As the galaxy prepared for what many believed would be its final battle against the ancient terror, a small group of humans on Earth were quietly preparing something completely different. While other species built bigger weapons and stronger shields, Dr. Hayun and her team were building something that no one else had ever tried. They were building a way to talk to the monster. The ancient creature had just finished consuming the energy from a dying red star when Captain Jiwon's small communication ship approached. The beast was floating in space like a living mountain, its tentacles drifting in the solar wind as it absorbed the last traces of radiation from the dead star. Every other vessel that had come this close to the creature had been destroyed in seconds. But the human ship moved differently. Pilot Tai-hyung guided their vessel in a slow spiral pattern, copying the way dolphins approached unknown creatures in Earth oceans. The ship moved with no sudden changes in direction, no aggressive maneuvers that might be seen as threatening. The engines were set to their quietest setting, producing barely enough thrust to maintain their approach. Pattern. Engineer Yoonji activated the harmonic frequency generators, and soft whale song-style sounds began broadcasting from their ship into the void. The sounds were modified for the vacuum of space transmitted. As vibrations through their hull and projected as radio waves across multiple frequencies, the patterns were based on the songs that Earth whales use to communicate across vast ocean distances. Dr. Hayun watched her instruments carefully as they approached, monitoring every sensor reading for signs of the creature reaction. The beast had noticed them immediately, there was no doubt about that. Its massive head had turned toward their tiny ship, and those ancient burning eyes were fixed on them with an intensity that made her hands shake. The creature was enormous beyond anything they had imagined on the sensor readings. Back on Corveth Prime, it had seemed huge, but now seeing it up close in open space, they realized that their entire ship could fit inside one of its eyes. The tentacles that drifted around its body were longer than Earth skyscrapers and thicker than subway tunnels. Each one moved with a fluid grace that was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Lieutenant Seojun studied the creature body language through the observation windows, looking for the subtle signs of aggression or calm that he had learned to recognize in dangerous animals. The tentacles were not rigid with anger, as they had been in recordings of the creature attacks. Instead, they moved in slow, lazy patterns like a cat that was curious but not threatened. "Something is different," Seojun reported to the team. "The creature is not showing aggressive posturing. Its tentacles are relaxed. Its movement is curious rather than hostile. We might actually have a chance." The creature's massive form began to move closer to their ship, and for a moment, everyone held their breath waiting for the attack that would end their mission and their lives. But instead of striking the beast, simply observed them. Its head tilted slightly as if it was trying to understand what these strange small beings were doing. Dr. Hayun activated the psychic monitoring equipment that she had designed to decode the creature. Mental emanations. What she found made her gasp in surprise. The creature was not broadcasting the rage and hatred that had been recorded during its attacks on other ships. Instead, the psychic emanations were filled with curiosity, confusion, and something that felt almost like hope. Captain Jiwon opened a communication channel and began broadcasting simple mathematical concepts. 1 + 1 = 2, 2 + 2 = 4. Basic universal truths that any intelligent being should be able to understand. She followed the math with simple pictographs showing peaceful intentions, images of their ship approaching slowly, patterns that showed they meant no harm. The creature response was immediate and overwhelming. A flood of psychic energy washed over their ship, carrying emotions and concepts that were so alien and complex that their translation computers could barely process them. But underneath the strangeness, there were things they could understand. Loneliness that stretched across millions of years, confusion at finding everything changed, fear of the unknown, beings that kept attacking it. Slowly, carefully, Dr. Hayun began to decode the creature attempts at communication. It was trying to tell them something important, something that it had been unable to communicate to any of the other species that had approached it. The concepts were vast and ancient, but gradually they began to make sense. The creature called itself something that roughly translated as Far Wanderer, and it had been sleeping beneath the ice of Corveth Prime for longer than most civilizations had existed. When it went to sleep, the galaxy had been different. The stars had been arranged in patterns it recognized. The pathways through space had been clear and familiar. But now, everything was wrong. The stars it had used as navigation markers were gone or had moved to different positions. The safe routes it had once known were blocked by new stellar formations or filled with the ships and colonies of species that had not existed when it went to sleep. The creature was not destroying things out of malice. It was destroying things because it was lost and desperate, and every attempt to ask for directions had ended in violence. "You are." The first ones who listened, the Far Wanderer told them through waves of emotion and half-understood concepts. Everyone else attacked first and asked questions never. I tried to communicate, but they only heard my distress as aggression, my confusion. As rage, Dr. Hayun felt tears streaming down her face as she began to understand the true tragedy of the situation. This ancient being had awakened to find itself alone in a universe that had changed beyond recognition. It had been trying to find its way home to spawning grounds in the galactic core that might no longer exist, and every species it met treated it like a monster. We understand Jiwan broadcast back using the psychic communication channel. We know you are lost. We want to help. You find your way home. The reaction was immediate and powerful. The Far Wanderer massive form shuddered with what could only be described as relief. Its tentacles reached out toward their small ship, not to crush or destroy, but to gently touch their hull in what seemed like a gesture of gratitude. The psychic emanations that flooded over them were filled with hope and desperate gratitude. For the first time in months, the ancient creature was not alone. The first time since awakening something had tried to understand instead of destroy. And for the first time, the galaxy had hope that the terror that had been consuming worlds might be something else entirely, as the Far Wanderer began to share its story with the human team. Captain Jiwan realized that they had just accomplished something that would change the course of galactic history. They had made first contact not with an enemy but with a lost traveler who just wanted to go home. The conversation between humans and the Far Wanderer lasted for 7 days and changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about the ancient creature. Captain Jiwan kept her small ship positioned near the massive being while Dr. Hayun worked around the clock to improve their translation systems. Each day brought new understanding and new revelations about what had really happened. The Far Wanderer had been one of many creatures like itself, millions of years ago when the galaxy was young. They were not destroyers, but gardeners tending to the spaces between stars and helping young civilizations grow. They fed on the natural radiation of stars and moved through the galaxy in great migrations that lasted thousands of years following ancient pathways that connected distant regions of space. When the Far Wanderer had gone into its long sleep beneath the ice of Corveth Prime, the galaxy had been a different place. The stars were arranged in patterns that made sense to its kind. The pathways through space were clear and well marked by cosmic landmarks that had existed since the universe was young. But 1,000,000 years was a long time, and the universe had continued to change while it slept. Many of the stars, the Far Wanderer, remembered as navigation points, had died and collapsed into black holes or neutron stars. Others had been consumed by their expanding neighbors or knocked out of their orbits by cosmic collisions. The pathways it had once known were blocked by new stellar formations, nebulae that had not existed before, and the colonies and space stations of species that were completely unknown to it. When it finally woke up, the Far Wanderer found itself alone in a universe it no longer recognized. It tried to communicate with the new species it encountered, but they did not understand its methods of contact. What the creature intended as peaceful greeting, the other species interpreted as psychic attack. What it meant as requests for directions, they heard as demands for submission. Every attempt at communication ended in violence. The other species attacked first and asked questions later. If they asked questions at all, the Far Wanderer, natural defenses activated, automatically protecting it from harm, but also making it seem even more threatening to the beings that were trying to destroy it. Each battle made the creature more frustrated and desperate, which made its psychic emanations stronger and more frightening. I have been alone. For so long, the Far Wanderer told them through waves of emotion that made Dr. Hayun weep. My kind used to travel together in groups of dozens, helping each other navigate the great migrations, sharing the joy of discovery and the comfort of companionship. But I cannot find the others. I cannot find the places we used to gather. I cannot even find the pathways home. The creature showed them images through psychic projection memories of how the galaxy used to look. Stars arranged in patterns that told, stories nebulae, that served as rest stops during long journeys, asteroid fields that had been shaped into beautiful sculptures by creatures with tentacles that could move mountains. The images were so beautiful and so sad that the entire human team found themselves crying. Dr. Hayun realized that they were dealing with something far more tragic than a simple monster. The Far Wanderer was possibly the last survivor of an ancient species that had been the galaxy caretakers long before any of the current civilizations had learned to walk upright. It was like finding the last elephant on Earth, except this elephant was bigger than planets and had been alone for longer than humans had existed. But there was hope. The Far Wanderer still remembered the location of its spawning grounds in the galactic core where others of its kind might still exist. The problem was that the creature was too weak from its long sleep and the recent battles to make the journey alone. It needed energy to travel that far, but every time it tried to feed, normally it ended up destroying the very civilizations it was hoping might help it. Lieutenant Seojun had an idea based on his experience, training animals on Earth frontier worlds. What if we could teach it to feed differently, he suggested. Most of the damage it causes is because it does not know how to feed safely in a galaxy full of inhabited worlds. It learned to eat in an empty universe where there was nothing to harm. Engineer Yunji expanded on the idea humans had spent centuries learning to harness the power of stars safely through fusion reactors and solar collectors. They could teach the Far Wanderer to feed on stellar radiation directly without needing to consume entire planets or space stations. It would be like teaching a giant to eat with a spoon instead of grabbing handfuls. The idea was ambitious and would require the cooperation of species across the galaxy, but pilot Tae-hyung pointed out that the Far Wanderer had already shown it was willing to learn. It had stopped attacking their ship when it realized they were not threats. It had learned to communicate using their mathematical and pictographic systems. It was intelligent and wanted to avoid causing harm. Dr. Hayun proposed a plan that was unlike anything that had ever been attempted in galactic history. They would work with the Far Wanderer to map out safe passages through the galaxy routes that would take the creature home without passing through inhabited systems. They would teach it to feed harmlessly on uninhabited stars, and they would help it search for others of its kind. It will take time, Captain Ji-won warned. The creature has been using the same feeding methods for millions of years. Teaching it to change will require patience and trust, and we will need help from other species to make this work. But the Far Wanderer was eager to try anything that might let it find its way home without causing more destruction. It had never wanted to hurt anyone. It had only wanted to find its family and return to the spawning grounds where it had been born so long ago. As the human team began to work with the ancient creature to develop new feeding techniques, other species across the galaxy watched in amazement. The terrible monster that had been destroying worlds for months was learning to be gentle, and it was learning from humans who had approached it not with weapons, but with understanding. The galaxy was about to discover that. Sometimes the most dangerous monsters were just lost children who needed help finding their way home. Communicate with the newer species had failed. They attacked first and asked questions never. The creature's natural defenses activated, and what should have been peaceful meetings became battles. Each fight made it more frustrated and desperate. "You're the first ones who listened," the Far Wanderer told them through waves of psychic emotion. Hayun worked with her team to map out safe passages through the galaxy, routes that would take the creature home without passing through populated systems. But there was a problem. The creature was too weak from its long sleep and the recent battles. It needed energy to make the journey, but taking that energy had been destroying planets. Yunji proposed a solution that was beautifully simple. Humans had spent centuries learning to harness the power of stars safely. They could teach the Far Wanderer to feed on solar energy directly without needing to consume planets or space stations. "It will take time," Tae-hyung warned. Teaching something that big to change its feeding habits won't be easy. But Seojun smiled. Humans have been training creatures for thousands of years. We just never trained one quite this big before. The Ye's plan was ambitious, dangerous, and completely unlike anything any species had ever attempted. It required trust, patience, and the kind of stubborn determination that humans were famous for throughout the galaxy. 6 months later, the far wanderer had learned to feed harmlessly on the radiation of uninhabited stars. The process was slow and required careful guidance, but humans were patient teachers. Jiwon's team worked in shifts, always maintaining contact, with the creature helping it adjust to its new feeding methods. The galaxy watched in amazement as the terrible monster became something else entirely. The far wanderer began helping instead of hurting. It cleared dangerous asteroids from shipping lanes. It used its massive strength to repair damaged space stations. When a plague struck the outer colonies, the creature's unique biology helped scientists develop a cure. Species that had once fled in terror now approached with curiosity and gratitude. The Velkorans offered their crystal technology to make the creature more comfortable. The Nexari provided protection during the creature's vulnerable feeding times. Even the mysterious Zephyrians shared their knowledge of space folding to help map shorter routes home. Dr. Hayun stood on the observation deck, watching the far wanderer play with a pod of space whales near Jupiter. The massive creature moved with surprising gentleness, careful not to disturb the smaller beings. "How did you know it would work?" asked Admiral Dongho, who had come to witness the miracle. Hayun smiled. "We didn't know. But we understood something the others missed. Fear makes monsters out of everyone, even ancient star travelers who just want to go home." The far wanderer eventually completed its journey to the galactic core, where others of its kind welcomed it back. But before leaving, it left something behind. A gift of knowledge about the deep history of the universe, and a promise that humans would always be remembered as the species that chose understanding over fear. As the creature disappeared into the cosmic background, carrying messages of friendship. To distant parts of the universe, the galaxy learned an important lesson. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not to fight the monster, but to understand why it became one in the first place. And throughout the stars, whenever species faced something that seemed impossible or terrifying, they remembered the humans, who tamed the far wanderer not with weapons or shields, but with patience, kindness, and the simple willingness to listen. The galaxy was never quite the same after that. It was better. While the greatest minds in the galaxy built weapons that could destroy stars and shields that could stop black holes, a small team of humans on Earth was taking a completely different approach. Dr. Hayun had convinced Admiral Dongho to let her try something that every other species thought was insane. Instead of building bigger weapons, they were going to try to understand the creature. Captain Jiwon volunteered to lead the mission, even though everyone told her it was suicide. She had seen the creature up close on Corveth Prime, and something about its behavior had stayed with her. The way it had looked at her through the window was not the look of a mindless destroyer. It was the look of something that was lost and desperate and alone. The team Jiwon assembled was unlike any other in galactic history. Dr. Hayun brought her research on creature behavior and her theories about what the ancient beast might be looking for. Lieutenant Seojun joined them with his experience training dangerous animals on Earth frontier worlds. He had worked with creatures that could kill a person with one bite, but had learned to trust humans completely. Engineer Yunji contributed her knowledge of harmony frequencies and sound patterns that could calm aggressive animals on dozens of different worlds. She had spent years studying how music and vibration affected the behavior of dangerous creatures. Pilot Taehyung added his understanding of flight patterns and territorial behavior from studying space whales and other creatures that lived in the void between stars. Every creature has basic needs. Dr. Hayun explained to the team during their first meeting: food, water, shelter, safety, territory, companionship. The needs might be different for something this old and this big, but they still exist. This creature has been alone for millions of years. Can you imagine what that kind of loneliness would do to any thinking being? The team spent weeks studying every recording of the creature they could find. They analyzed its movement patterns, its choice of targets, the way it reacted when different types of weapons were used against it. Slowly, they began to see things that the military analysts had missed. The creature did not attack randomly. It moved in patterns that reminded Seojun of migration routes used by animals on Earth. It seemed to be searching for something specific, avoiding areas of space that contained certain types of radiation and gravitating toward others. It only became truly violent when it was cornered or when someone attacked it first. What if, suggested Yoonji during one of their late-night research sessions, what if it is not a monster at all? What if it is just the last of its kind trying to find its way home? To a place that no longer exists. The idea seemed incredible, but humans had always been good at incredible ideas. While other species prepared their final defenses and built evacuation fleets, the human team prepared something that had never been tried before. They designed a ship that was built not for fighting, but for communication. The ship had no weapons at all, no armor, no shields, nothing that could be seen as threatening. Instead, it was packed with every type of communication device. That human science could create radio transmitters that could broadcast on thousands of frequencies, psychic amplifiers that could project thoughts and emotions, light patterns that could create complex visual messages, sound generators that could reproduce any noise in the known universe. We are going to try to talk to it, Ji-won explained to Admiral Dong-ho when she presented their plan. We are going to approach it carefully, peacefully, and see if we can find out what it wants. The plan sounds insane, I know, but every other approach has failed. Maybe it is time to try something completely different. Admiral Dong-ho looked at the plans for their communication ship and shook his head. You realize that every other ship that has gotten close to that creature has been destroyed within minutes. You are talking about approaching something that has killed billions of people with nothing but communication equipment. Ji-won nodded calmly. That is exactly what we are talking about. Every other ship has approached it as an enemy. We are going to approach it as a friend. Animals can sense intention. Admiral, if we go to it with peaceful thoughts and open minds, maybe it will respond differently. The other members of the team had spent months preparing for this moment. Seojun had studied every recording of the creature movements, learning to recognize the subtle signs that indicated different emotional states in dangerous animals. Yoonji had created a library of harmonic frequencies based on the sounds that calmed aggressive creatures across dozens of worlds. Tae-hyung had programmed flight patterns based on the way dolphins approached unknown creatures in Earth, oceans moving in slow spirals that showed no threat while demonstrating intelligence and curiosity. Dr. Hyun had prepared translation programs that could analyze psychic emanations and try to decode them into understandable concepts. As their ship was being built, the creature continued its rampage across the galaxy. But now the human team noticed things that others had missed. The creature spent long periods of time motionless in space, as if it was listening for something. It avoided certain types of stars completely while being drawn to others. It moved in patterns that suggested it was following some kind of map or memory of how the galaxy used to be. The creature is trying to navigate by landmarks that are no longer there. Dr. Hyun realized during one of their final planning sessions, stars have died, and new ones have been born since it went to sleep. The pathways it once knew have changed. The territory it remembers is gone. When the communication ship was finally ready, it looked nothing like a military vessel. It was smooth and curved, with no sharp edges or threatening angles. The hull was painted in soft colors that shifted and changed like the aurora on Earth. The ship moved silently through space with engines that produced no harmful radiation as they prepared for launch. Ji-won looked at her small team of volunteers and felt a mixture of pride and terror. They were about to attempt something that every expert in the galaxy said was impossible. They were going to try to have a conversation with a creature that had destroyed entire civilizations. But if they succeeded, if they could somehow find a way to communicate with the ancient terror, they might save what was left of the galaxy. And if they failed, well, at least they would fail while trying something new instead of repeating the same mistakes that everyone else had made. The communication ship launched quietly from Earth with no fanfare or ceremony. Just 5 humans in a peaceful vessel heading toward the most dangerous creature the galaxy had ever known, carrying nothing but hope and the crazy human idea that every problem could be solved if you just tried hard enough to understand it.